Boom. Hello and welcome to the Voice Break podcast, formerly Sooth Singers podcast. But my guest today is an actual knight. Well, he's a knight to me because that's Sir Drew Binsky in the house. And Drew does amazing things. He is an athlete, correct me if I'm wrong, model, and he's
Correct.
also a musician. Yeah?
Retired. Somewhat.
Retired. Okay.
Somewhat.
Okay, well, I'm interested to know the story behind that.
Okay. So he hit the button, guys. So we're in trouble here. Um, the story behind the musicianship. Where do we start? Okay. There was a motorcycle accident that left me incapacitated for several months, just kind of laid up with all sorts of difficult emotions because it caused a physical disability. And I was 19 at the time. And so that kind of just completely ruined my self image because, as a teenager, that's pretty much all you've got at that point. Your whole ego is built around, how you're received by others. And a large part of that is your aesthetic and how it plays into it. And so that kind of left me in a very bad mental state. And somehow, some way, I found music as an outlet to kind of cope with the difficult emotions that I was experiencing. And so I wrote Are we allowed to cuss on here?
Go for it.
Profanity. Okay, so it's relevant. The first song that I wrote was called "Fuck the World," and so that was me kind of grappling with some very difficult emotions. And I took that, wrote it, and I was kind of just laid up. I had a hospital gurney in my house, and parents were taking care of me at the time. And so I'd kind of lean over, and I had a computer that I could record on. And so that's how that first song came about. Sourced the beat on the internet and recorded it. And then eventually went into the studio once I was mobile and re recorded it in a higher fidelity and really just fell in love with the process. And so the creativity, the expression of it, it was just, I just felt like I was at home and had found a new love. And so from there, I started writing and recording more and pursuing it as a little bit more seriously, just to see, hey, how far can we go with this? This newfound love, do we get all the way to the marriage and the house and the kids and the white picket fence? Or, is there some sort of like really tough, stormy breakup somewhere in the middle? So I got about as far with that venture as having songs played on local major radio stations. So I had a couple songs that were not quite in rotation, but they'd make it in the mix and they'd make it into after hour shows. Every now and then I built up some good relationships with a lot of the local DJs, and sometimes they'd invite me on to their radio broadcast, and I'd get on there and start freestyling and stuff and have fun with that. I'd walk into a club and they say, "Oh, Drew Dude in the building," and they shout me out. And sometimes it was over when they were doing the live broadcast. So then I get people texting me and they go, "Yo, did they just shout you out on the radio?" And so starting to get a little bit of a buzz, and did some shows, some regional shows, opened up for some like B-list artists every once in a while. And discovered that I didn't actually like the performance aspect of musicianship. I really enjoyed writing, creating, getting in the studio, knocking out tracks and listening to them on repeat for hours on end, just one song playing in my head, my song, because I didn't really like what was coming on the radio and what other musicians were putting out at the time. So I'm like, I'll just listen to my own stuff. And so really enjoyed that aspect of the process. But the actual performing, I could live without it. And so obviously that's a very necessary component to success in the music industry. So I decided, I had some competing priorities as well. Right around that time, second kid was conceived. And so it's like, okay, do I really lean into the family aspect of things, or do I continue to neglect them to chase this music dream, which was I was starting to realize wasn't much of a dream. It was I scratched the itch with the creative outlet, and that was good enough. Saw some success, got a little notoriety, and then decided to hang it up, if you will. I still write, I still record. I'm actually working on an album now. It's the hip hop genre, just for fun though, not necessarily for any commercial success.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. I thought I'd heard a little bit about that story, but I'm glad you told me here in a synopsis.
Sure.
So something that I've thought about a lot myself is how when people get into music, and I experience this very viscerally, people start creating and they start either singing or even taking lessons, for instance. They go full swarm, and it's like almost the preconception of being a musician is that it's either all or nothing, and there's no in between. You can't just be creative and like enjoy the creativity. You have to be 100% and be on tour and do all of this stuff full
Mm,
force, and maybe that's not even you, right?
right. No, it's interesting. I'm watching this show now, and I forget the name of it. It's my wife's really good at just finding random TV shows that we get sucked into, and it's about like some post-apocalypse, future where there's this grand reset. And it came on the heels of some flu-like pandemic. It feels like it was modeled after COVID, to be quite honest, but taken to
Mm.
the extreme levels where everybody dies and infrastructure is just completely shut down, and now we're back to bonfires and horse and carriage, except the carriage were cars that were no longer mobile. So it's kind of interesting. But anyway, in the show, there's this one writer who's working on a project, and someone asks her, what are you going to do when it's finished? Because it's great. We're looking at, bestseller, New York Times sort of deal. This was pre-pandemic in the show, back when the world was just regular. And so she's working on this project. It's this great work of art, and she just says no. It's just going to be done, and that's it. That's the end of it. And a lot of confused, befuddled looks around the table because like that just the idea of creating something for the sake of creating and not to try to capitalize on it and turn it into some commercial successes, it just seems lost on some people. And it was on me too. I was the same way when I went into it. I'm like, oh yeah, MTV Cribs, and let's get the money bag and all that, and in the pursuit of that, actually compromised the artistry because I felt like, oh, I had to make certain type of songs and they had to be structured a certain way, and the albums had to have they had to have a club hit, and it had to have a radio single, and it had to have a song that appealed to the women, and it's real formulaic, um because I was going after that commercial success rather than just creating for the sake of creating, which is what I do now.
Mm, that's huge. And sorry, give me a second. I always forget. This is the fourth episode, but I always forget to silence my phone. Sorry about that.
No worries. It actually didn't come through on the
Oh, really?
feed, so yeah.
Well, it's awful for me. I'm like, it's got to be coming through. Well, I'm so glad you said that. I wondered if I was alone in that mindset, because I put myself through the ringer in music, and particularly with voice and like voice lessons. So I went through like training and stuff like that, and really all I wanted to understand was how people did it. And then, well, my first teacher had to leave, but a colleague of his was at the local community college. And we talked about me going through the program, but because he left, I didn't know anyone I could per se trust other than the colleague. And the only way to do that was to go through the program. So I went through vocal performance, which I didn't want to do, but I wanted to understand. So I wasn't going to stop. And it was just brutal, just brutal. So what you're saying reminds me of something that I heard just today. I had a meeting with an awesome guy who was telling me about a nurse that he said kind of like asked people who were in hospice or on their deathbed, like, what's one thing that you would change? And nobody talked about money. Nobody cares at that point, right? And no one talks about fame. But it's very relevant today that he would tell me about this. But most people said, I wish I'd been truer to myself.
Hmm. I feel that.
It's like, damn. that's the kind of thing that makes you stop and think and throw some things out of your life. Because just like in your case, throwing out the performance aspect, like this is where we cut the line. This is not me after that point. And I think that's essential because a lot of people are living thinking that they have to be something that they're not.
Yeah.
It's the worst way to live.
Yeah. No, that's deep. So, like, my whole arc over maybe the past 10 years or so has been an act of unmasking, if you will.
Hmm.
So, complicated childhood. Won't get too much into it, but it led to a lot of people pleasing behavior, which
Hmm.
then leads to somewhat of becoming a social chameleon for the sake of fitting in. And in the process of and being accepted. And in the process of doing that, being what everybody else needs me to be for their own comfort or entertainment or whatever it may be, I lost myself. And so the past, decade or so has been about really trying to find myself again. And in doing so, showing up more authentically, just kind of expressing from the heart and not through any filters of what I think other people want to see me as or receive me as, but just showing up as myself and still learning what that actually means now. When you play a lot of roles, so husband, as I mentioned, father, at work, supervisor, managing other people, sometimes you get lost in the performance of it all. And that's what happened to me. And so now it has been about course correcting, even at work, kind of showing up more authentically and still towing that line because, you got to be professional and do some code switching in that environment. And it's different. I work in corporate America doing IT. So, I can't just get on top of the tabletops and start cussing everybody out like I really want to. My inner child really wants to just come out and play and do all sorts of things that would be considered inappropriate. So there's a line. But I find myself even when I'm writing emails being less formal now and being a little bit letting my personality come through a little bit more in some of those correspondence. And then online threads, which is where we connected, that's what I've been all about. That's my entire platform right now, is just showing up as myself, heart on the sleeve, saying what comes to mind and not really being too concerned about how it's received. And trolls come in and we do battle every now and then, and that's always a fun time because it's like are you familiar with Eminem and kind of his whole backstory as a rapper, the musician Eminem?
I've heard a little bit, but no, not entirely.
Before your time. So,
Uh-huh.
Eminem was like a super huge pop icon. Now he's just some old fart to the next generation. But back in his prime, like he was the guy. He really commanded pop culture for however long his run was. And he was notorious for saying that, he feeds off of the energy of the people that diss him and attack him and antagonize him, and he actually needs that to fuel his creativity to some extent. And that's how I feel about trolls online. They come out the woodworks with their spears and they start chucking them, and I'm just like, yeah, bring it on, baby, because that that just helps me be a little bit more creative as I'm doing duel with them. It just keeps me sharp, and it's good exercise, good
Yeah,
mental exercise for me.
that's so funny. I never thought of it quite like that. Although at one point, I did like kind of live by that creed, so to speak. I I don't know. I guess I lost the focus, but I can see exactly why that would be fuel for creativity and for, well, just fuel in general, because it's somehow together, even if it's negative, we have more energy than when we're purely alone. And
Hmm.
I don't know about introversion or extroversion if that really matters, because doing something together is ultimately more powerful than alone.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
And energy is the word that comes to mind for me. And so I just, I'll take that energy and harvest it and alchemize it and use it for the power of good. so that, when it's returned, something good comes out of it. Maybe somebody sees an exchange with a troll and sees, one person in attack and the other guy being poised, and go, okay, maybe there's another way to handle this. And in the rare occasion, there have been times when a troll has become a friend online. And so, by standing in my center and not allowing me to, become triggered and navigate those interactions in a way that can lead to a positive outcome, maybe that's a good example for other people that may stumble across that and say, okay, well maybe I'm not going to fight fire with fire all the time. Maybe I'll try a different approach. But a lot of that comes to being able to manage your own responses and your own reactions to triggers. And I always say the online space is a great place to practice trigger management, because whether it's somebody that's directly attacking you, whether you see something that just stirs something up inside of you that you really disagree with, and you want to go into the attack mode, and you got to check yourself and go, wait a minute, what's this I'm feeling here, and why, and start to unpack that for yourself before you just lash out at somebody else. So, I view the online space as just a good training grounds for managing myself overall, and how I interact with the world and the people around me, especially when it's not all love and light.
Absolutely. That's so funny. I remember two things. So I want to mention this before I forget. I remember the troll, and I want to circle back to that because that was actually extremely inspiring, as you were saying. And the first interaction that we had, I saw a post of yours, and it was like, I'm going to be 100% authentic, even if it pisses people off or something like that.
Mm.
And I was like, bring out the fire, man. And you were like, I don't know if they want that, dude. But I'm glad I saw that, and then seeing the interaction with this one troll. I don't even know who it was exactly, but that was so, like, it was baffling to me. It was inspiring in that way. I was like, it made me rethink interactions and negativity and how we receive it, because everyone's human.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we face like backlash or opposition, we think it's like once and for all. Like, that's the way it's always going to be. This person is always a troll or just an asshole. But the way that you did it is just like talking about energy, like you were saying. I think of Aikido. Do you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like,
Steven Seagal is like, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's like,
yeah,
he was the face of Aikido for a while.
yeah, and it's amazing how you can take the principles of that and apply it to emotion and be like,
Yeah.
you're getting something, but you're gonna alchemize it, just like you were saying. And it's beautiful how that happened. I was like, I knew you could do that.
It doesn't always work out like that. And sometimes I don't have the bandwidth to even dance at that level. So, it's all about being aware of what your capacity is in any given moment, and using discernment, with the person on the other end of the screen or interaction, if it's an offline thing. And humans are incredibly dynamic, but some people, they'll dig their heels in. Some people are more open to kind of playing with that sort of energy once you volley it back to them. So it's all circumstantial, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make. But I do look for those opportunities because I think they're fun, like break the matrix moments when you're expected to react one sort of way to a certain kind of stimulus, and nobody would blame you if you do, and then you go completely left with it, and people just don't understand it. But it's fascinating and it's intriguing nonetheless. I'm always looking to break the matrix, just because I feel like our world we're in an interesting space. I was just talking about this with someone where the political correctness is at an all-time high, and thought uniformity is valued over people having different views and different opinions. Like we used to be able to sit down across from somebody and have a conversation where, I had a view, you had a view. Maybe those two views, they were in conflict with one another, but we could disagree without being disagreeable, without, being at each other's necks and just constantly looking to tear each other down. Most discussions of different viewpoints these days, they just devolve into like bickering and psychological attacks. Like I'm looking for the way that I can poke the bear and wound you and make you retreat from this just because it hurts to continue this conversation because I've insulted you in a way that really stung. Versus like, let's stick to the issue and let's talk about the actual topic and not just try to hurt one another in the process because you think different than I do. Like our whole world is like, oh, you're a bad person because you think differently than me. And I just hate that. I hate that our society has come to that. And I think that some of it is being fueled by bots. If I can just be conspiracy theorist for a moment, I see bots rampant on Reddit. That's one of the platforms that I engage on pretty regularly. You see the porn bots littering Instagram, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's conversation bots too that are kind of stoking the flames on both sides of any polarizing topic for the sole purpose of creating division. And there's too much of that in the world right now, and it's hard to find the middle. And that's where I want to sit, right in the middle, because I can see both sides of any given situation. Palestine, Israel, who's right, who's wrong? They both are. They're both right, they're both wrong. In any major debate, Republican, Democrat, neither. Independent, not even registered, and just independent. I don't even vote. And even that comment would be triggering to some people when I say, "Oh, y'all don't vote." They say, "Well, you don't have the right to even have an opinion about what's wrong with the world if you're not voting to fix it." Well, my opinion is the same system that created the problems of this world isn't going to fix it. So it doesn't matter, which individual candidate might have the best of intentions. The whole system itself is fucked. And so one good person coming in isn't going to be able to Superman the day. I'm sorry. We need to build a whole new system. That's kind of where I stand on that. But saying some of these things out loud can draw a lot of ire from people and a lot of strong opinions. And that's where the conversation gets lost because people respond from that place of emotion and being reactive instead of responsive. And so we can't even have a good conversation about these things.
Yeah, it is sad. And the way I see it is, well, there's definitely bots, that's for sure. In a similar way to how I was saying, like when we build things together, when we do things together, that has the most power. When people are visibly having a debate online, that has a certain gravity to it. Like someone just talking on a YouTube channel is not going to generate that kind of pull. And the sad thing is division is very attractive. When people see division, like, what's going on? Right? People come rushing just to see a conflict. And maybe the way the internet is these days is everything is so visible, and you can start something up and have that kind of pull just like that. And I feel much the same way. Like, what it really does is distract us from any commonality.
Mm-hmm.
And commonality is what we're built on, not our differences.
Yeah, I mean, we all want the same things, right? When you start peeling back the layers, people just want to be happy. They want to be healthy. They want to have a good community around them. They don't want to have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from. If the roof has a leak, they want to be able to repair it and have the means to do that. Like we all want the same stuff, and then we just get lost in this ideology. We want the best for our kids. We want to give them good opportunities and to see them in a world where they're able to thrive and explore whatever it is that they want to explore, their passions, their interests. Humans all want the same thing. It's interesting. Like if you were to go around, and except for the people that just want the world to burn, because there are some of those out there too, the jokers of the world. But for the most part, if you were to just go out and interview a large segment of the world population and just ask them a single question, do you want war or do you want peace? Guarantee you the overwhelming response is I want peace. I don't want rockets to be flying overhead and have to worry about if they're going to come crashing into my home. But yet the world is just constantly in a state of war. Why is that? I think about these things. Why is it that, the majority of the people want one thing, but it seems that we have another? Do you want equity? Do you want equality? Overwhelming, yes. 26 people in the world have as much wealth as the bottom, 50%. How does that happen? It's like the will of the people isn't necessarily translating into how the leadership structures of the world are behaving. And that's when I start going down rabbit holes and really questioning things, which is why I go on my break the matrix sprees, because, that to me, that represents the Matrix. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that movie or if you've ever seen it, because, it's that's a bit of an older one. That, man, I'm really aging myself. I saw that movie in the theaters when it first came out, and I was like a teenager around that time, and I didn't realize the gravity of it then. But now, after some more life experience, I'm really able to kind of contextualize that movie. And, you see the quote sometimes saying, oh, The Matrix wasn't a fiction, it was a documentary. And in some respects, it really was. Maybe we're not all in a computer simulation. That's debatable, though. But, maybe we are. But the way that the world uses people for just to fuel the machine itself of the world, kind of as a completely separate entity of the people itself. The people are just a means to an end to power this machine that really benefits the few to the detriment of the many. And that's why every opportunity I can get to kind of like poke holes in that whole paradigm, I do. Instead of divisiveness, instead of being at each other's necks, let's find the common ground, let's find the middle, let's find the point where even if we can't agree, we can disagree respectfully and civilly, and not walk away from it with one person feeling like they got the upper hand and the other person feeling like a wounded puppy. Let's keep it civil, and let's spread love where we can, because there's so much of the other stuff floating around out here right now. Sorry, a bit of a tangent here. Well, I'm not even sure what we're talking about at this point. I'm ranting.
No, that's actually, it's very topical, if that's the right word. I've heard people use that and I don't even know anymore. But first of all, I grew up on The Matrix. I watched it when I was 5. My parents had to cover my eyes for a lot of scenes, but it's not a problem. I adore that movie, and I really like that approach. Personally, I think it's kind of true to me as who I am as a person. I was thinking with my mom the other day, when in her neighborhood there are sidewalks. In our neighborhood here where I grew up, there are no sidewalks. And I was like, I hate sidewalks.
It's an odd thing to have hatred for.
I know. But it's just like, if you walk the dog or you want to take a walk outside, you take the sidewalk, but it's like the same walk every single time. I'm like, I just hate it, dude. And growing up, it was you make your own. It doesn't even matter where you walk. But the fact that you're walking somewhere, you have free roam over the land, it's a whole different feeling.
Yeah.
It feels really good. So I like that, breaking the matrix. I like to do that. In fact, it's like one of the funnest things to do, because you're expected to do something and you realize you have the power to do something completely different. And you're like, I don't have to do this. And then you do what you want to do. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw this series of videos on Instagram one time. Some guy was doing similar break the matrix behavior, and he's like, "Look, everybody's all in their heads worried about what other people are going to think." He's like, "Nobody cares." I could. He's like in some parking lot, people leaving out of like a professional sports game or something like that. And he's like, "Look, I can run up to these cars and ask somebody for their parking pass right now." And some people are going to say no, some people are going to say yes, but hey, maybe I get some free parking out of it. And so he does, and he's on film and he's running up on people and he's doing that. Somebody gives him their pass that hasn't expired yet. Boom, free parking. And then there's another scene of him like in front of at some sort of another sporting event, and then he stands up in front of everybody in the bleachers and faces them. And he's like, "Look, nobody's going to care if I just start saying, a whole bunch of random stuff." And then he starts addressing the crowd, and some people cheer, some people ignore him. And he's like, "Look, still alive. I didn't die as a result of that, and it's no big deal." And his whole thing was, just be you, and don't be so worried about how other people may receive you, especially strangers, and what their opinions may be, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. So just, you know, you don't have to follow the sidewalk. You can carve your own path out in the woods, and just kind of follow your own flow, and see where that leads you, because you know where that sidewalk is going to lead. I get that. That's profound. It's every day it's the same sidewalk, and it's going to take you to the same places, but you never know where that bend in the woods may lead.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm an explorer at heart. That's what I've found out recently. When I was like, I was thinking about purpose. And I was like, well, I just came to a point where I was like, purpose isn't what matters. Because you can get purpose from a lot of different things. And some of it
Hmm.
might be from something else, like from outside of you. And so purpose can get confusing. What I realized is, what I now do with my students is I ask, who are you to yourself? And I asked this to myself, and I said, I'm an experimentalist, I'm an explorer,
Hmm.
and I'd like to share what I find.
Hmm.
And, well, that just makes perfect sense. Like, I'm a cartographer, even. I like to map it out, like where I'm exploring, because it's never been charted before. I want to share that with the world. And sometimes that comes through in music, sometimes that comes through in voice coaching, just new things that I find, and even in the mental health sector and like psychology, that kind of thing. So I want to contribute to the world by not walking the same path.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's really, yeah, that's really beautiful, and it resonates too. I operate from a similar place of just wanting to explore and share and follow the thread of my creativity through whatever medium it wants to weave itself through. So sometimes that's
Mm.
music. I've done photography in the past as well, videography, creative writing. I hate the idea of being limited to one niche, if you will, or even trying to build a bit. I've tried and failed to build so many businesses because they've all been ultra specific. And eventually I just lose the mental stamina to continue to pursue them because the novelty's gone. I'm not,
Mm.
it's just another job. Like that's been a recurring theme in my life. I want to break out of the 9 to 5 corporate world and do something of my own. And so I try this and I try that and find some success, and then sabotage myself by just stepping away from it. Ultimately, because they were no more fulfilling than the actual day job that I'm trying to escape. The photography business just turned into another job. And I've realized over time that no, I don't want just a creative business. I just want to live as a creative and express myself through whatever means, and somehow just get paid to exist. And so that's the part that I'm still figuring out right now. Ironically, there is a website called paidtoexist.com. where they supposedly teach you how to do that sort of thing. But of course, it's behind $1,000+ paywall, like all these other internet courses. And I've bought enough of those, and I'm still in the same place. So at this point, let's just figure it out. But anyway, that totally resonates. Being an explorer. What kind of music do you write or perform?
That's the hardest question to answer.
Yeah, for
It's the
sure.
hardest question to
Yeah, I like there's not a ready answer to that.
answer. That's a really interesting topic, and actually, one thing I was curious about is like I wanted to ask something similar to you, but I'll answer your question. So I've been through this journey, right, with this whole singing thing and learning and studying. It's been 6.5 years, and in that time, I was like, "What the hell do I even want to do with this?" Like, legitimately, and it's a hard question, but I found out in my self study, I don't like to write songs in the same way that I don't like sidewalks.
Okay.
In the same way that I don't like to sing, but I do like to explore, and I do like to chart the path. So what I realized was, first, I like to write stories. But the reason I like to write stories is because it creates a new experience. And something that I could take, like, if I could take a song and physically put it in front of someone, be like, okay, now you experience it. And they're going to experience something similar to what I experienced in a linear fashion. And I'm like, that's beautiful. I do the same thing with like courses and with my teaching, create an experience. And then I hand it over to someone. I'm like, is this similar for you? And it ends up being, yeah. I'm like, that is so cool. So that's what I do. And that doesn't really answer like what kind of music, but it ranges from like dark and metal influences to stuff I don't even know what to call it, but I'll put it this way. My biggest influence is the games that I play. Huge gamer.
Okay.
So game soundtracks basically were the foundation of my music experience. I'm like, you're going through this thing and you're hearing this stuff going on. The music isn't the whole experience. The game isn't the whole experience. It's all together. That's where it gets its power.
Hmm.
So that's what I create. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
I can
More.
show you. I can show you if that helps.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Is that something you would do here, or are you talking about another time?
Oh yeah, I'll send you a DM. I've got a few different things actually. You'll see
Cool.
what I'm talking about. Like I can't put a name to it.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. Please,
Yeah,
I'd love to check it out. Whatever it is that you've got. Yeah,
sweet.
an experience, I'm sure it'll be. Maybe that's how you define it. It's the experience of Tristan.
It is. That's so funny. My student was saying, "Man, you really need to rebrand it." And why I ended up rebranding the thing because of the power of a brand, but the Tristan experience. It's powerful.
I like
So
it.
thank you.
It's
I
got
mean,
gravity to it.
you coined it.
Yeah, of
So
course I
yeah.
would like it. I'm a narcissist like that, just liking my own stuff.
Hey, we all are to some degree. But shit. No, I don't even know what we were talking about.
The
Oh
change, the brand.
yeah, the change and well, I'll send you some stuff. But what I wanted to ask is, this is going to be a roundabout. Trust the process.
Sure.
So with your fitness journey, how do you feel that has helped your self study and how that's helped you realize your ideal life.
Like cultivate more self-awareness.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a direct answer to that question, but maybe I'll just share a little bit more about the journey, and
Mhm.
we can try to tease out the gems from there. So, yeah, I mentioned the motorcycle accident, the disability, and how that impacted my self-image. And so fitness was a tool for me to rebuild that self-image and that self-confidence. So, okay, I may be missing a limb at this point. And for anyone who may stumble across this, the hopefully in the show notes you'll put some links or something in there. There's a story that's pinned to my Instagram page that kind of explains what happened, and how we arrived at this point. And there's pictures as well there, so you can get the full visual of what we're talking about here. But getting back into the gym was a way for me to rebuild that self-image and that self-confidence, and also just another outlet for those emotions. So, the pain, the anger, the rage, the weights are a good place to let all that out instead of other people. And so, and it's great fuel. Rage can be a powerful emotion if it's harnessed for the right way and used with intent. And so I'm able to do that in the gym. And it worked to some degree. It helped abate some of those emotions. It helped rebuild my self-confidence. Now I look in the mirror now, and well, first of all, I can look at myself in the mirror. There are a lot of people who don't even want to look in the mirror because they just know they're not going to like what they see. They avoid mirrors. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, damn, I like what I see. I like how far we've come, knowing where we started to where we are now. And sure, there's more chiseling that can be done. But if I were to just like freeze frame my current physique right where it is right now, I'd be okay with that. I'm okay with taking my shirt off at the beach. I'm okay with, you know, looking and feeling good naked. I'm in a good place with my self-image at this point. And a lot of that is thanks to the work that I've put in the gym. And it taught me a few things beyond just, how to feel good about yourself. One was resilience and persistence, and kind of two sides of the same coin, but at the same time not. So the resilience piece comes in where I've had injuries that I've had to work through at the gym, and sometimes those have sidelined me every now and then. Like you tweak your lower back doing some deadlifts, or shoulders get all janky from a bench press gone wrong or something like that, and now I can't
Mm.
bench for 4 weeks or 4 months. And it's like, damn, now, all that hard work, and you start to see it, you get puffy, and
Mm.
you start getting soft, and you're like, man, and it can be demoralizing. And then you got to pick yourself back up and get back into it if it's that important for you. And you got to work through the rehab and the pain, and get back on that horse and do it again. And so, you grow character and resilience through that process that I can then take into other areas of life as well. When life gets tough and when I get knocked off track, we've been here before. And so we know what this feels like, and we know that if we just get back on that horse, maybe we ride off into the sunset eventually. So, it's taught me resilience. There's a persistence too, in that, you can't just arrive at the promised land. Like okay, I've got what I feel is a decent physique now, but I can't just stop going to the gym. Otherwise, it goes away. So I've got to maintain it now. So I've got to stick with it and be consistent. And I can't just, drop it all together. And I've learned also that consistency will always win over intensity if you can't consistently be intense. And that's a little bit of a mind bender when I first say that. Um, but let me unpack it a little bit. So some people, they'll go into the gym, and they'll be motivated and rah, and throwing weights around and have a good session, and then that motivation doesn't show up the next day, but it's part of your workout plan to go to the gym. Oh, I'll just wait for the motivation to show up. And maybe it doesn't show up that day and you skip the workout. And the next day it does, and you're back at it. And you kind of go through these start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And I've learned that for me personally, and maybe this is different for each person, so I'm just speaking on my own experiences. For me, even on those days when I don't feel like going, I can show up and maybe not have the greatest of workouts. Maybe I'm not hitting PRs. Maybe I'm not even moving the same weight that I could move last week just because physically I'm fine, but my head's not in the game in that moment, which is just as important. But I'm there and I'm doing something and I'm continuing to cultivate that habit, that practice. And over time, just the practice of showing up, even on days when you don't want to, is for me the most important thing, because I've got the whole neurodivergent thing, the ADHD, and boy, I chase impulses around like a dog in its tail. Like that's just my jam. And so motivation is big for me, and I'm realizing that nothing meaningful can get done when you only show up when you feel like it. And so the gym has taught me to just be consistent in practice. And over time, like when you pan out and take a macro view on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, those don't feel like it days where you didn't accomplish as much. They don't have a negative impact on the overall arc. They positively benefit the arc, because you showed up and maybe you just moved the needle just a little bit, but it moved. You took one step, and that's better than taking a giant leap. If you just take one step every day, it's better than a giant leap every once in a while. So consistency over intensity for me, and those days where you're consistent and then you have the intensity to match that, like, oh, I got a great night's sleep, my dopamine is firing the way I need it to, so I'm really motivated today. That's just the cherry on top at this point. But getting to the point where you can just practice what it is that you set out to do as consistently as you can, that's been a game changer for me, because also that's something that I can take into other areas of life as well. Does
That's
that
awesome.
answer the question?
Absolutely.
Cool.
And and now I have two forks in the road of where I want to take this. But what you're saying is incredibly profound. We hear this kind of stuff, right? We hear this a lot, and I wonder if this is true for you. But growing up, when people talk about consistency is key and this and that, it didn't mean much to me because I hadn't experienced much yet.
Yeah, me either.
So when you start experiencing things, coming into it, oftentimes we feel like it's all about us. Like our effort, our motivation, and our skill is going to take us to the next level. We're going to prove ourselves to be XYZ and so great. And I find this is true in when people come to voice lessons, like for the first time. Oftentimes we, myself included, are thinking, I've got something to bring to the table that no one else has, and it's going to be that thing that propels me forward, like, I guess, talent. But my teachers and I, to my students, we can show every secret that we know. And you know the secrets. There you go. It doesn't produce the results.
Yep.
What I find is when people are successful, you can see this in every single success story. There is something that they plug into that's built into the day. It doesn't matter if they're feeling good or not. Plug into it, you do this. That's what creates success. It's not about talent. It's about having that thing there, and you show up and you put in your work. It doesn't matter how much, but you put in the work.
Just getting the reps in.
Just getting the reps in. So I'm curious to know how that same regiment has helped you in your own creative process.
I haven't quite found a way to transfer it yet.
Hmm.
But I'm also finding that my creative process is a bit different than building a physique. Building a body of work is different than building a physique for me. What I've found creatively is that, and it's interesting. So I'm on a bit of a sobriety journey. So trust the process, right? So I'm gonna bring it full circle to you as well.
Mm.
I'm on a bit of a sobriety journey, and something that I've wanted to do for a while, but I was always worried that my main tool for creativity, cannabis, that once I set that down, I would lose my connection to my creativity. And so that's been a deterrent to getting clear headed for quite some time. And that's actually exactly what happened during the first couple weeks of this sobriety journey. It was just dark, neurochemistry trying to rebalance itself and all that notwithstanding. The biggest issue I had was I was not feeling creative. And that's like my source, my life source. If I'm disconnected from my creativity, there's really no point in existing. And so it got dark. And then I found that over time, the clouds cleared, the sun came back out, and the creativity returned, but just in a different form. So previously, I could roll up a joint and spark up, sit down, write a song, or create some other work of creative writing. And now I find that I just have to keep my antenna up, and the words, the lyrics, they find me randomly throughout the day. And so the entire day kind of becomes a creative act as opposed to, a moment, an hour or two of me sitting down and summoning it. I can't summon it now. It just kind of happens when it happens. I have an idea, I project that idea out into the ether, I put my antenna up, and then it's the words and the work starts forming around that idea, and so my job is just to capture it. And I think any creative will, they can probably attest to the fact that it's not me. I'm not coming up with this stuff. It's coming through me. And so it's just the way it happens is different for me now. But for me, I can't just show up, at a blank screen and start writing and do that consistently every day. And sometimes the writing's bad and sometimes the writing is good. I've tried that. That just doesn't work for me. So that's the gym approach, right? You just show up every day and do stuff. I can't do that. So for my creativity, antenna goes up, stuff just happens. And sometimes it doesn't. And I don't force it during those times either. If it doesn't happen in that moment, it doesn't happen, because I know that at some point it will. I was sitting in the sauna last night and came up with a nice, cool little jingle that just randomly smacked me upside the head. Then and as soon as I got out, the voice recorder came out and I started putting words to it, and now we've got something going. And then the magic left 10 minutes later, and okay, bye, see you later. It's just it can be fleeting in a sense, but like little fairies that just come and sprinkle some dust, and then they're off to the next thing. But it always comes back, and so I'm finding that it just changes form. That's all. But the same regiment doesn't apply to me creatively.
Interesting. Wow. Well, I'm learning a lot today. I had not considered the possibilities of like difficulties in getting sober regarding a creative process. I have, well, I used to drink, I guess. I didn't like it. It was one of those things that you do when you're a social chameleon and you're doing what people expect.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a creative thing for me. It was just like a thing. But now that I know that actually helps me a lot, because I know that there's a lot of people. In a way, marijuana is kind of touted as this thing that will make you more creative,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's funny how you mentioned that it's like you have now, once the smoke is cleared. That was
Ah,
a pun not intended, but that was good.
that was good.
Once the smoke is cleared, you find you have like a different structure to your creative process. Like it's almost
Mhm.
like you have a thing and you're just catching raindrops,
Yeah.
catching stars that fall. You're like, well, that's cool.
Yep.
Right? It's funny you mentioned that because one of the songs I'm going to send you was something like that. And the way I picture it now, with that in mind, is I came up with the title almost before anything. And then from that title, I was like, and I guess the premise, I was creating, or I was catching things that would fit that from then on. And that's how it all came together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm personally really interested in how to help people with their regimen to get more creative, because it's, like you said, it's like your lifeblood. And it is for me too. And I appreciate you mentioning that.
Everything I do is an act of creation. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Even the stuff I post on Thread, like if you go look through my replies on Threads, you'll see some interesting kind of left field responses that I make to other people sometimes. And sometimes they're like little creative 500 character short stories, colorful remarks. It's all just to continue to exercise that creative muscle and
Mhm.
keep that connection open and allow it to just flow through me. And so I never want to close that spigot whenever it opens up, even if it's in places where it feels like maybe this doesn't fit. One time they had a one word response to me in some posts, and I like just went machine gun mode with all kinds of rapid fire, creative responses. And it's like, how did you get that from that? And it's maybe it's not even about the person that I'm responding to. It's just about keeping that connection open, that creative connection.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off there though. I hope you
No,
didn't lose it.
I'm glad you said that. I had a feeling we were very similar. Just from the first interaction, I was like, this dude gets it. And I don't know if you've seen. I mean, surely you've seen the stuff that I've written. I'm like, I just started having fun with it. I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
This whole social media sidewalk, it's not for me, man.
Full
I gotta do
circle.
something different.
I love it. I love it. We're full circle.
Yeah. So I knew we were aligned from the start, and man, what a conversation. Holy crap, man. Oh, well, we've got some stuff to talk about, but before I send you my stuff, is there anything that you would like people to know about? Maybe not even per se like, yo guys, listen to my album. Or like something you're passionate about that you think people should know about.
I wish I had prepared for this question. The only thing that really comes to mind for me is, and this is gonna sound a bit prescriptive, but it's not about me, it's about humanity. And I wish people knew that we individually and collectively can be the change that we're looking to our political leaders, to our social leaders, to everybody else to make on our behalf. It's not, vote for this person. It's not Elon Musk could use his billions towards better ends instead of buying another house or whatever. Why doesn't he fix, world hunger? Why don't we? Maybe we don't individually have $1 billion pot, but 1 billion people putting $1 into a pot can accomplish the same goal. And so I just wish people would think outside of the box a little bit and stop waiting for other people. It's like I see it all the time. Oh, this rich person should spend their money helping, X cause. And I wonder, well, what is the person making that comment doing towards that cause other than posting on the internet about it? You know what I mean? Like, we could be doing stuff too at whatever level and whatever resources that we have, and we can organize in a way that our collective power yields just as much strength as those individuals that have more resources than us. But we're not doing it. We're just waiting on other people to do it. And so I guess my message is be the change. And that's kind of what I'm up to on Threads a little bit. Like, I joke about this, but it's not really a joke. I want to build a community big enough that we could just take over the world and fix all this shit. Because world domination is the goal. New World Order, Illuminati, all that. Bring it on. That's the goal. People talk about New World Order as if it's this bad thing, and I think that on some level, whatever powers that created this narrative have done a great job at dissuading people against the idea that we should build new systems, that we should create a new world. But if we don't, what changes? Nothing changes if we don't create a new. If we don't look at the world differently and come up with an entire new way of organizing ourselves. We got enough food to feed everybody on this planet. We have enough resources to build houses and shelter for everybody on this planet. And so the fact that people are still homeless, the fact that people are still dying of food scarcity purely comes down to a mismanagement of resources. And that's based on the way that our world is currently organized. So we need to reorganize the world. We've already seen that the power structure that's currently in place isn't going to do it. They're comfortable just perpetuating war and famine. And so if something's going to change, it's going to happen with us. It's going to start with us. We don't need anybody's permission to start organizing and to start forming collectives and changing things and pooling resources and coming together and just improving this world that we live in. It's just like, I'll leave it with this because it's turned into a bit of a rant. There was a while back where Domino's Pizza had this campaign where they were filling potholes in with the Domino's logo in the street. I don't know if you ever saw that, but look it up. It's interesting. They'd find these potholes in various localities and just fill them and stamp them with Domino's Pizza. And it turned into this cool little viral thing. But there's a takeaway from that. Normally the city that's responsible for maintaining the roads, or the county or the township or whomever is responsible, they fill the potholes. And when they don't do their job, the potholes don't get filled and people's rims get bent when they run over these big potholes and tires get busted or whatever. Domino's, private corporation, came in and said, we're not going to wait. We're just going to go start filling potholes. We as humans can do the same thing. Fill the potholes in all throughout the world without having to wait for the government's permission to do it. And that's my message.
That's amazing. I love that. Oh, I knew I liked you, man. Just like breaking the matrix.
Yes, sir.
It all comes full circle.
Appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation, brother. It's been great to connect.
Absolutely. It's been great to connect, and we'll be in touch. Thank you, folks, for watching. Holy crap, I got some things to think about. I'll catch you next time.
Take it easy. Later.